Recently, NetEase gave us a teaser for the next Arbor Day event, which takes place every March. If you're unfamiliar with it, Arbor Day is a special event in Identity V that coincides with the real-world Arbor Day, a secular holiday dedicated to planting trees. In China, it's typically celebrated in March each year. The event offers plenty of freebies for players, including stickers, accessories, portraits, and usually a free B-tier skin for a specific character. Since the event is inspired by this theme, everything from the skins and accessories to the rewards and storylines is nature-focused. Speaking of storylines, Identity V has hosted 5 Arbor Day events since 2020. However, since the rewards are usually just B-tier skins, some players tend to overlook the story in favor of the cosmetics. In this video, I'll take you through all the past Arbor Day event stories, from the very first one in 2020 to the latest in 2024, so you can catch up before this year's event. This is your broadcaster, Silmina, signing in. The first Arbor Day event in Identity V was held in March 2020, titled The Eternal Forest. The event rewarded players with spyglasses, stickers, and, as the ultimate prize, the B-tier skin for Axeboy, Death of Iria. Players could unlock the event story by logging in daily during the second half of the event, with new parts revealed each day. Here's how the story unfolds. Deep within a dense forest, a logging team arrived to begin their work. The team leader recorded in their diary that the area was beautiful, filled with tall trees and flowing streams. As they set up camp, they noted that 5 scouting teams would be sent out to survey the surroundings as planned. However, each scouting team returned with the same eerie report: they had seen a monster lurking in the forest. At first, the team leader dismissed these claims as paranoia and incompetence. Frustrated, they decided to lead the scouting efforts personally, complaining in their diary about how unreliable their team was. But as night fell, doubt crept in. In the next diary entry, the team leader admitted that the forest felt unsettling in the dark. Strange, glowing eyes stared at them from the shadows, and an unnatural silence loomed. Still, they remained determined to continue the project. Progress was going well, and the team leader seemed optimistic. Still, they mentioned that one of the hunting teams failed to return. At first, they assumed the hunters had simply lost their way, but soon after, another team vanished. Despite these disappearances, the logging project was completed. The team leader, determined to find the missing teams, ventured deeper into the forest. What they encountered was beyond comprehension. Thick fog, glowing lights, creeping vines, and mysterious creatures lurking in the dark. The once confident logging team found themselves hunted, running blindly through the trees, feeling unseen eyes tracking their every move. Panic set in. No matter which direction they fled, the presence remained. The team leader described the eyes watching them as animal-like. In desperation, they abandoned their rifle, caring only about escaping alive. Then, a chilling howl pierced the air, but the forest wasn't willing to let them go. The path back was swallowed by fog, forcing them further into the unknown. Echoing whispers surrounded them, repeating a single message: "You do not belong here." In the final diary entry, the team leader revealed that they had suffered a severe leg injury. Every team member was gone. They never saw their attackers, never understood what they had faced. Alone, unable to move, the last words they wrote were a desperate plea for help. The second Arbor Day event took place from March 11th to March 21st, 2021. As with the previous event, players could earn various rewards, with the ultimate prize being the B-tier skin for Gardener, Soul of the Forest. The event's story revolves around the Titantree forest, an immense and ancient woodland that serves as a sanctuary for countless creatures, including a mysterious robot named Mr. Eggshell. At the heart of this vibrant ecosystem stood the legendary Tree of Life, a colossal tree that sustained the entire forest. Seasons in the Titantree forest were a spectacle of nature's beauty. Spring brought lush greenery, birds nesting in the towering branches. Summer saw flowers blooming in a riot of colors, with butterflies dancing around them. Autumn filled the trees with ripe, heavy fruit, while winter blanketed the branches in soft snow, where birds would hop and play. For the forest's inhabitants, rabbits, hedgehogs, birds, and countless others, the Tree of Life was more than just a landmark. It was their home. Under its shade, creatures thrived, and even their dreams were said to be sweeter beneath its protective branches. Among the many beings that called the forest home, Mr. Eggshell was a peculiar one. No one knew where he came from, but he had always been there, resting peacefully beneath the Tree of Life. The animals adored him, playfully tickling his metallic frame while he's sleeping under the Tree of Life. Mr. Eggshell never get mad at them, as he loved them so much. Life in the Titantree forest was harmonious, until one fateful day. One morning, the peaceful rhythm of the forest was shattered. A group of humans arrived, their footsteps heavy and loud. They carried chainsaws, their voices echoing through the trees as they talked carelessly among themselves. The buzzing of their saws roared like a monstrous beast, sending the birds and insects into a frantic escape. The destruction began. Trees fell one after another, their trunks groaning in agony as they collapsed. Leaves rained from above like sorrowful tears, and terrified animals fled in all directions, their homes reduced to splinters. Even the majestic Tree of Life was not spared. Its ancient branches snapped under the merciless blades, its fall a slow, painful tragedy. Mr. Eggshell awoke to a scene of devastation. Horrified, he rushed to stop the intruders, but they ignored him, just as they ignored the suffering of the animals. The Titantree forest, once so full of life, had been reduced to ruins. With no home left, the creatures had no choice but to leave, heartbroken and furious. Mr. Eggshell swore to protect what remained of the Titantree forest, even if he had to stand guard for eternity. Time passed, and hope returned in the form of the Soul of the Forest. This mysterious entity sought to restore what had been lost and welcome the players' help in reviving the once thriving woodland. The player, guided by the Soul of the Forest and aided by a small companion, set out on a mission to bring life back to the devastated land. Through perseverance and teamwork, the restoration was completed. Young leaves sprouted, delicate flowers blossomed, and the air once again carried the fresh scent of nature. The Tree of Life stood tall once more, its roots spreading energy across the land, revitalizing the once barren earth. For Mr. Eggshell, the greatest joy was not just the forest's recovery, but the return of its inhabitants. From every direction, the animals came rushing back, their home finally restored. With the danger gone, Mr. Eggshell lay once more on the soft grass, falling into a peaceful slumber. No longer would intruders threaten their sanctuary. The Titantree forest was safe, filled with laughter, sunshine, and the warmth of home. The 2022 Arbor Day event took place from March 10th to March 21st, 2022. As always, players could earn various rewards, including clues, fragments, room music, portraits, and more. The grand prize was the B-tier skin for Seer, called Verdant Bard, who was also the central figure in the event's story. The story follows Seer, the Verdant Bard, who had made a promise with his friends to reunite in a certain forest on Ashen Day. 10 years later, however, when he arrived on the promised day, the once lush forest was gone, replaced by a barren wasteland of sand and stones. As he stood alone, a barmaid approached him and invited him to her inn for a drink. The seer hesitated, but eventually agreed. When he told her that the forest used to be his hometown, the barmaid looked confused. She claimed no one had lived there for a long time, since it had always been just sand and stone. The seer insisted and asked what had happened to the forest. The barmaid explained that in pursuit of economic growth, people had cut down the forest's trees for fuel and construction. To them, the forest held no real value, and they were willing to destroy it for prosperity. She also shared her own sorrow. Her brother had been gone for years, and while she waited for his return, the forest disappeared. Pubs and markets emerged everywhere, and people no longer needed her drinks. The seer explained why he had come back. He was waiting for his friends, as they had promised to celebrate Ashen Day together a decade ago. Ashen Day was a special festival where people would gather to sing and play music, showing their appreciation for nature. The seer also revealed something deeper. His people were born from the giant ash tree that stood in the forest. As long as they nurtured it with love and music, it would continue to bloom. The barmaid doubted that the seer could revive the tree and the festival, but she decided to wait and see. Soon, a young boy named Robbie arrived, singing to himself. The barmaid explained that Robbie was an odd child who lived at her inn. When he noticed the seer's harp, he became excited and asked him to play it. Robbie then shared his own story. His parents had once lived under a juniper tree, but now the tree was gone, and so was his home. He sang a song about his parents leaving only him and his sister to sail a tiny boat alone. As the seer and Robbie played music together, a mercenary arrived at the inn, much to the barmaid's delight. However, he quickly noticed something unusual. The giant ash tree near the inn had started to grow new leaves. The barmaid realized it might be because of the music the seer and Robbie had played. The seer had said that as long as they cared for the tree and played music, it would continue to bloom. The mercenary, staring at the tree, admitted he hadn't seen a living tree in a long time. It reminded him of a tree back home, one just as tall, where he would play his flute, surrounded by a river, farms, and fireflies. Sometimes, he would even sleep beneath it. But he had been away for years, working as a mercenary to survive. While he was gone, his village was destroyed. Farms were burned, trees were cut down, and peace was lost forever. Everything he once knew was gone. Despite this, he asked to join the seer in playing music, hoping the giant ash tree would truly bloom again. Time passed, and soon, a violinist arrived. He sarcastically commented that the inn looked so fragile that a strong gust of wind could knock it down. The barmaid, unfazed, invited him in for a drink. The violinist accepted but joked that he hoped his taste buds would survive whatever she served him. When the seer asked why he was there, the violinist replied that he had been traveling, searching for inspiration. The barmaid, noticing his refined demeanor, guessed he was from the upper class, which irritated him. Fueled by alcohol, the violinist went on a rant, criticizing the nobility. The mercenary, smirking, added that he recognized the violinist. He was a famous performer for the king and princess a world-class musician. The violinist, still drunk, continued cursing the upper class and pleaded for art to return to nature. As they all played music together, the giant ash tree continued to grow stronger. Then, a postman arrived, drawn in by the lively atmosphere. The barmaid was thrilled to see him, but the postman hesitated. It seems that he had come to say he was thinking of leaving the place forever. Before he could speak, the barmaid excitedly pointed out that the tree had grown even more, with beautiful flowers blooming on its branches. The seer welcomed the postman and invited him to join their celebration. The postman agreed, saying it had been a long time since he had seen such a joyful gathering. The seer then reflected on the situation. The forest might never return to what it once was. The land would likely remain dry, the plants ruined. But if they all chose to forget what had been lost, then they would truly have nothing. He hoped that whenever people looked at burning firewood, they would remember that it once stood as a living tree. The mercenary then asked about the seer's old friends, the ones who had promised to meet him for Ashen Day a decade ago. The seer smiled and replied that they were there, that they had been with him all along, and that just as they had promised, they had all reunited under the blooming giant ash tree. The 2023 Arbor Day event, called Verdant Dreams, ran from March 9th to March 22nd. It featured a variety of prizes, with the top prize being a B-tier skin for the character Gravekeeper, named Withered Leaf. Withered Leaf is also one of the main characters in the Verdant Dreams story, which is set in a post-apocalyptic world where plants have gone extinct. With the ecosystem destroyed and most life wiped out, very few humans remain. Withered Leaf is one of the survivors, and he holds on to a deep wish to find the flower from his dreams in this barren wasteland, hoping it will guide him home. While exploring the ruins, Withered Leaf discovers a book from an old research facility. The book reveals the locations of the last 7 seeds on Earth and shares the story of what led to the planet's destruction. The book was written by Emma, a researcher who worked in an underground facility dedicated to preserving plants on the brink of extinction. Emma, whose codename was Rabbit, worked alongside another researcher codenamed Hare. Their first task was to care for a ginkgo tree, one of the last of its kind. Hare mentioned that they might get to see its leaves turn gold in the autumn. Over time, the facility received more rare plants, like a Chinese yew tree, a species so rare it was almost only known from books. Hare noted that while some plants in its family were poisonous, others had medicinal uses. 6 months later, the ginkgo tree's leaves finally turned gold, bringing a small sense of hope and normalcy to Emma and Hare. They also recorded details about a sago palm, though Hare was saddened to receive it, knowing it was likely one of the last of its kind. Emma understood why. The plants that arrived at their facility were always those on the brink of extinction. Over a year passed, and Emma had never left the facility. A researcher responsible for transporting plants brought worrying news. The surface world was in chaos. Mass extinctions, natural disasters, and a deadly blight were spreading at an alarming rate. Emma began to question the purpose of their work. When a lowhand pine, the last of its species, arrived at the facility, she grew frustrated, asking Hare what the point of their research was if they couldn't save the plants. Hare didn't answer but wrote the name Emily on Emma's hand, hinting that it was Hare's real name and that their time together might be ending soon. Not long after, Hare disappeared. The facility claimed she had been transferred, but Emma suspected it was a lie, especially since Hare had given her some plant seeds before leaving. A new researcher, Tracy, codenamed Squirrel, joined Emma. Tracy brought candies, trying to lift Emma's spirits. As Emma tasted the sweetness, she recalled a time when the world had its own natural sweetener, nectar from flowers. But now, nectar no longer existed, and she doubted it ever would again. In her second year at the facility, Emma learned the grim truth. The blight had caused global food shortages, leading to wars and the extinction of countless species. The environment had been destroyed by humanity's overuse of Earth's resources, and the balance of nature had collapsed. When a Chinese parasol tree arrived at the facility, Emma was reminded of her childhood when she used to play under similar trees. She felt hopeless, realizing their efforts to save the plants had failed. While exploring the facility, Emma found iris flower seeds and some mysterious medicine. Whatever the medicine was, it revealed a dark secret about Emily, though the story never explicitly states what it was. With this knowledge, Emma decided to leave the facility, taking the seeds Emily had given her and some candies from Tracy. She knew the facility wouldn't survive much longer. A former researcher, codenamed Red Panda, had been in contact with her and would help her once she escaped. Before leaving, Emma left the iris seeds behind, hoping they might one day be planted as a last symbol of life and hope in a world that had lost so much. The story then shifts to the perspective of the player, who awakens in the desolate world described in Emma's research notes. As the player begins wandering through the ruins, they come across Withered Leaf, the gravekeeper, who is searching for something in the rubble. Initially startled, Withered Leaf regains his composure and explains that it has been a long time since he last saw another living person. For the past 3 months, he has been searching for a specific flower seed, and he has finally found some clues about its whereabouts, the very research notes that Emma left behind. Before he can return home and rest for good, he must first find that seed. The player then joins Withered Leaf on his search. Each time they discover a seed, he makes a remark about it. The first seed they come across is a ginkgo seed, the same kind Emma once planted years ago. However, it is not the one he is looking for. Withered Leaf explains that the research facility preserved many plant species, but he only cares about the flower seed. As they continue their search, they uncover a Chinese yew seed, but Withered Leaf has no knowledge of what it is. By the time he lived, all plants had already gone extinct, followed by animals, and then the people who succumbed to hunger, storms, and floods. The story seemed to represent a global climate catastrophe had wiped out all life, leaving the earth in ruin. Later, they find a sago palm seed, but once again, Withered Leaf only focuses on finding the flower seed. He comments on how the heat of the sun is unbearable, and the sand in the air makes it difficult for him to breathe. In my view, Withered Leaf believes that he is the only one who still cares about what remains of the old world, since he cares about the flower seed. When they find a Lohan pine seed, Withered Leaf becomes bitter. He resents the people who lived in the research facility, believing that they never experienced the kind of suffering he endured. With a grim tone, he declares that the world deserved to be destroyed. He also reveals that he already prepared his final resting place long ago. His true goal is not just to find the seed, but to plant it, let it bloom, and finally rest in peace eternally. Eventually, they find a cornflower seed. Withered Leaf recounts that the day before, while searching through ruins, he had found a can labeled sugar. Hopeful, he opened it, only to discover that it was filled with ants. As they discover a Chinese parasol seed, Withered Leaf senses an approaching storm. He remarks that the polluted river and crumbling ruins are all part of nature's revenge against humanity. Aside from that, he also believes that the final page of the research notes must contain information on the flower seed. Finally, they found out the iris flower seeds, the very ones Emma had left behind. Withered Leaf is overjoyed. This is what he had been searching for all along. He seems prepared to follow through with his plan, planting the seed and letting the beautiful purple petals bloom. However, after a moment of reflection, he changes his mind, deciding that the soil of this land is not worthy of the last hope for life. Instead, he chooses to keep the seed with him and continue moving forward. What happens to Withered Leaf after this remains unknown. Perhaps he continues his journey until he finds a place suitable for planting the seed, allowing himself to sleep eternally in peace once it blooms. Another possibility is that he may choose to bury himself along with the seed, ensuring that it remains safe. Regardless of his fate, his story is left open-ended, leaving room for a possible continuation in the future. From March 7 to March 20th, 2024, Identity V's next Arbor Day event takes place. Titled Forest Silage, it is a direct sequel to the 2022 Arbor Day event Ashen Oath. As usual, players can claim several free rewards, with the ultimate prize being the B-tier skin for Perfumer, Lily of the Valley. 3 years have passed since the seer celebrated Ashen Day with the barmaid and the others. The once ruined ash tree seemed to be reviving, but in the end, it couldn't survive and withered away. With its disappearance, fewer travelers passed through the desert, and the barmaid's small inn struggled to stay open. Business was declining, and with each passing day, the place felt emptier. She reminisced about the past, thinking about how her inn had always been her home. But now, with her brother gone and guests becoming rarer, it seemed time to say goodbye. During what seemed like the inn's final days, a certain perfumer from the city arrived. The barmaid was startled but happy to see a new face. They exchanged greetings, and the perfumer introduced herself, explaining that she created perfumes using aromatic plants as the base, and had come to this place in search of inspiration. The barmaid, however, was doubtful. She told the perfumer that there wasn't much left to inspire her. There were hardly any plants left, and even her inn was about to close. She explained that years ago, a massive ash tree had been the heart of the land, but after being struck by lightning, it finally died, leaving behind only its roots. Hearing this, the perfumer felt saddened, especially when the barmaid mentioned that she and her friends had once made a promise to reunite under that tree on the Ashen Day. Now that the tree was gone, they had no place to meet, and it felt like their bond had faded into a distant memory. Hearing that, the perfumer had an idea. There's a theory that scents can store memories. If she could mix a perfume using plants that held sentimental value, perhaps it could help the barmaid preserve the memories of her friends. The barmaid agreed and set out to collect the necessary ingredients. Her first stop was the forest, where she recalled a memory of making wine with her brother years ago. They had once found a plant with a sweet, unforgettable aroma. Searching through the overgrown ruins, she finally found it, vanilla pods. Hoping it would help capture the essence of the past, she returned to the inn with her first ingredient. Upon arriving, another visitor showed up, the postman. The barmaid was relieved to see him after such a long time. He had come to the inn to celebrate Ashen Day, but his visit also came with sad news. He planned to leave for good since there was nothing left for him in this place. The barmaid, saddened by his decision, suggested that he might have something to contribute to the perfumer's project, perhaps a scent that reminded him of the forest. The postman agreed and set off to find something meaningful. he eventually discovered cedar, a scent that reminded him of all the early mornings he had spent delivering mail with his dog, the forest air clinging to his uniform. Later, a wandering traveler arrived. It was the mercenary whom the barmaid had met 3 years ago. He had returned for Ashen Day, only to find that the giant ash tree was gone. He shared that during his travels, he had looked back many times, only to find that the villages and forests he once passed through had vanished. He had hoped the tree and the inn would still be standing, but now, even this place was fading. The perfumer explained her project, and, after some thought, the mercenary decided to help. He wandered to the tree trunk and found some moss. Recalling a night when he had walked along the riverbank, the scent of moss had made him feel lonely, but at that moment, he had also heard music from the inn. While the group gathered at the inn, a young boy suddenly appeared and snatched the perfumer's bottle. It was Robbie, a boy the barmaid had taken care of, who had been living in the inn. While everyone tried to calm him down, he began rambling about many things, but one revelation stood out. The story of the tree being struck by lightning was a lie. The truth was, people had cut it down. It was never revealed why the barmaid hid the truth. But with Robbie revealing what really happens, the barmaid couldn't help but sighed and confirmed the story. After the Ashen Day, 3 years ago, the tree had flourished, but word of its revival reached the palace. A man was sent to investigate, and though Robbie had been suspicious and tried to stop him from entering the inn, the man eventually returned with a chainsaw and others to cut down the tree. They took it away in carriages, leaving nothing but its roots behind. As the truth settled in, Robbie cried. The perfumer tried to console him, explaining her project and asking if he had a plant that reminded him of the forest. She wanted to capture the beauty of what had been lost in a scent. Robbie, eventually agreeing, went to his secret base and returned with Ebony. He described how sleeping surrounded by its scent always made him feel safe, like being wrapped in a warm embrace. Later, a well-known violinist from the palace arrived, making sarcastic remarks as usual. Upon stepping into the inn, he joked about its rundown appearance, calling it a place ready to collapse in the wind. The barmaid, unbothered by his attitude, told him he had arrived just in time for a farewell. This was the inn's last Ashen Day. The postman was leaving, and she wasn't sure if the mercenary would stay either. This revelation caught the violinist off guard. He had actually come intending to settle here. He then shared his own story. A year ago, he had found a violin made of spruce, and its music had captivated him. He had visited a farm, wandered through wildflowers, and met people. But before long, the farm and the spruce forest were gone too. That was when he remembered the giant ash tree, the inn, and the people he had met 3 years ago, which led him back here, only to find that the place had changed once again. Like the others, he agreed to help with the perfume and retrieved a piece of spruce wood from the ruins. The last visitor was the seer. The moment she saw him, the barmaid was overjoyed, even more so when he reassured her that he had never forgotten their promise to meet on Ashen Day. Still, he was saddened by the loss of the giant ash tree. The barmaid apologized, saying she had failed to protect it, but the seer comforted her, reminding her that everything must say goodbye one day. The postman asked if there was anything they could do to bring the tree back, but the seer replied that they had already done the best thing they could, by remembering it and giving it a proper farewell. The perfumer then asked if there was a plant that reminded him of the forest. The seer had too many to name, but instead, he asked her what Ashen Day truly meant. She explained that it was a day to promote environmental awareness, to appreciate and protect nature. Hearing this, the seer finally chose a piece of oak, recalling that as a child, there were once towering oak trees in the forest. He remembered finding an owl beneath one, its feathers dusted with ice-cold snowflakes and carrying the scent of oak. He shared that his people once believed they were born inside trees, and though those trees were gone, their scent and memories would always remain. The next day, Ashen Day arrived. The postman remarked that it should be a day of celebration, yet it was also a day of farewells. The mercenary noted that not all stories have happy endings, and they might never see each other again. The barmaid, however, insisted that even if they were separated, they could still share their story with others. The seer added that the reunion reminded him of a nursery rhyme from his hometown, the very ruined forest they stood in. No matter how many years passed, he would still sing the song, because memories never fade. With all the ingredients gathered, the perfumer finished the perfume, with its final ingredient being Lily of the Valley. It was a scent that would forever hold the memory of the lost forest. And in the end, the story the player had experienced wasn't real. It was a recollection of the story told by the seer. The upcoming Arbor Day event is set to begin on March 6, 2025. As always, players can look forward to several free rewards, with the ultimate prize being Bonbon's B-tier costume, prototype robot. There isn't much to say about the event itself just yet, as it has not started. However, we do have a glimpse of the story that will unfold. Many years ago, a sudden catastrophe caused sea levels to rise dramatically. Torrential rains extinguished the flames, and soot left behind by heavy industry, restoring the once pristine night sky. Displaced people drifted across the waters, and among them, a small robot. Its original purpose long forgotten, fell into a deep slumber aboard a swaying vessel. In its hazy dreams, the world still thrived with life. With no directive left to follow, the little machine gave itself a new mission. Using a simple glass container filled with water, it would nurture the first trace of green back into this wasteland. This story appears to be a direct continuation of the 2023 Arbor Day event, as well as the one from 2021. But for now, there's not much more to go on. We'll just have to wait and see. And that wraps up the full story of Identity V's Arbor Day events. If you're looking for more details, feel free to check out the IDV fandom, linked in the video description. Hopefully, this recap fills in any gaps for those who might have missed the previous events. This is your broadcaster, Selmina, signing out.